Alright guys, good afternoon. Looks like today we're going to work on my 36 Ford. There's a good story behind this thing. It was a friend of the family had owned this car, Jim Torini. My grandparents, they lived here in California up north near Marin. My grandparents and their great-grandparents lived in the same property next door to the Torinis, and even Jim remembered visiting and seeing my great-grandfather out in the front of the house smoking his pipes and stuff. And Jim had owned this 36 Ford, and Jim's brother, it was Torini's Auto Salvage up in Marin up there. His brother had owned a junkyard, and Jim and his brother built this car, 36 Cabriolet, and I'm using some hot rod parts at the time. The 36 Ford had mechanical brakes on it. They had converted it to hydraulic brakes, so they used a lot of parts out of a 46 Ford, I believe, because that's what the steering wheel looks like. So it's got 46 Ford hydraulic drum brakes on it. It's got a Columbia 2-speed differential and all the gadgets that make it work. This was an interior kit that Jim and his buddies had put together for this thing, but the original is still under there. They chromed the dash, all the head boat, all the bows and everything are chromed. Everything works in here. It's just rotten. And then and it is a rumble seat car. And there's all the seat pieces I have. The floors are perfect. And then it's Studebaker tail lights on it, Oldsmobile bumpers, and it's a 5.9 AB engine with Edelbrock heads and the intake. I got into casting for a while and made the air filters for it. They're plastic, and then made the kind of progressive linkage, chain linkage for the carburetors. Just something fun to do. And then I cleaned up the firewall and got everything off the firewall. And this car, which is kind of hard to believe, but this car was actually given to me. When I got it from Jim, it had been in pieces in his garage, and he had suffered a stroke years ago, 10-15 years prior, when he had taken it apart and he couldn't finish it, and sat in his garage for years, and I used to remember seeing it in there. And then it ended up eventually in my grandmother's garage next door. And so finally, when it came down to it, when we had to sell my grandmother's house, I get a phone call, and my mom tells me, yeah, Jim said he was going to give you that 36 Ford. I could not believe what I heard. I had to get a truck and go down there and get that thing as quick as I could before something happened to it. I got a lot of extra parts and pieces to go with it, but a lot of it was apart and hadn't run in like 30-40 years or something. And so what I did when I got it home, I had to preserve it, is what I did. So I took the body off of the frame, sandblasted the frame, cleaned everything up, fixed any of the big spots in the floor, which there weren't many, rust spots. So it's all brand new brakes and everything in it. The drivetrain looked pretty good, so I left it alone. I pulled the heads and the pan off of the engine, and it looked pretty solid. I just cleaned up the tops of the cylinders a little bit for a little residual rust with a hone, and then left the rings and everything in it. And it's already got, Jim had put adjustable lifters in it, so it's already got adjustable lifters in this flathead. And then I did have to fix rust back here. They were known for rotting back here. So all this is new. And then I got the paint matched. It is a metallic paint, so I matched it. It's a little bit darker, but I toned it down a little bit. And so I had to cut it in here straight across. And there's 2 layers of this, an under and a top. And replaced all of this. It's got a brand new gas tank in it, all new rubber and stuff like that in there. And then tried to blend it in the best I could up in here to match some of the patina of it. And then steering box and everything. So what I did with the steering, which was pretty neat, it's a 3-speed on the column. These cars are original 3-speed in the floor. Somebody had sealed up the floor and put the column in it. This is out of the 46. And this is actually an Oldsmobile, I think it's an Oldsmobile, no, it's a Pontiac instrument cluster inside here as well. It's pretty neat. And then the clock is pretty cool too. But yeah, so I put all new wiring harness in it, and then I rotated the shifting mechanism for the 3-speed. It used to be on the top, the rod was, but with the rod on the top, it would come down and these arms right here would hit the cylinder head. And that was a problem he had this whole time. So he had the wheel just a few inches off the seat, and it was hard to get in and out of. So I was able to flip the whole mechanism upside down and run it, and it fixed the problem. It works perfectly like that. Just had to shorten some of the rods a little bit. And it's got the light with it, mobile light. Just a lot of neat little things on here. I do have some factory lenses for it, the glass big bulbous lenses, but it already had this kit on it from way back when he worked on it. And so that's most of it. I think the engine's mainly stock for the most part cam wise, but for those of you that know, on these old flatheads there was no way to adjust the valves unless you ground the valve stems to adjust the lash. So putting adjustable lifters in it were kind of a big deal back then. And these are just like knockoff Strombergs, like Chinese brand from I forget where I got them from, Speedway, but they worked really good so far. And then I have electronic ignition. It's a crab style distributor. The early engines had that crab style, and then the later, like in the early 50s, had a more of a standoff distributor with it. And that's a Toyota Land Cruiser alternator that I kind of ground to give it a smooth look. And so I could keep the ignition system in good working condition that way. Keep breakdowns to a minimum. But I have all the pieces that go on the front, the roof, the side panels, and the running boards were smoothed out. He had smoothed all this stuff out already. It was kind of popular back then to do that. And so I'll just leave it alone. And they are a wide bolt pattern on these wheels, wide 5 pattern. But the 2-speed diff is pretty awesome. You can shift on the fly with it. Then I redid the exhaust with just some glass pack mufflers, so it sounds really nice like that. And let me see if I can get this thing started. It's been sitting here hibernating for quite a while. It's getting lonely back here. I'm working on these 2 cars for friends, and this is mine, that's mine, those 2 are mine. That's a 51 Dodge, I think late 60s Dodge. I picked up this Ford for like $2 grand, runs great. And then this 65 Ford for $2 grand. It needs a distributor. So I got a lot of stuff going on, minus the cars out front. But this Ambassador is about ready to go. Some electrical work and stuff like that on it. But let me see if I can, these tail lights really are pretty awesome. I think they're maybe 41 or 40 Studebaker tail lights. They fit the curve of the fender perfectly. If you see that, it's amazing. They're really neat. I thought about casting those because you can't find those things around. They're all glass. But let me see if I can start this thing here. get a something to bang on it with. Or the float stuck. Yeah, let me. There he goes. Okay, cool. That was easy. Yeah, that's gas. I mean, it's pretty funny that I just pulled the heads off and I just jammed a hone through the top portion of the cylinders and left the rest of it. But it worked fine. I hate to jinx it, but it doesn't smoke at all. Not even the smallest bit. And it runs smooth and everything. Ah, it's leaking again. There it goes. Okay. Let me get a, I'm gonna grab a hammer. All right, now to get the ambassador out from the back. Now this thing, I was working on this thing. I'm not sure how the tranny's going to shift because I think that was one of the concerns. I haven't driven it yet, or not down the street. But I just did some safety stuff to make it safe to drive for them, and so I put rigged up a heat riser here for the choke. Got the carburetor working good. Got the charging system working good. It's a positive ground, and it's been a while. I forget everything I did, but yeah, all new brakes. I had to rig up an ignition or a headlight switch for it using a new one, and the old one had to cut it up and make everything work. I still have a turn signal side that's not working, but I'll figure that out. Just want to move this thing around to out from here to a little better spot. But this worked pretty good. This was a universal headlight switch. The DS141 is a 6-volt switch, and pretty reasonable. Got it on Rock Auto, but I trust standard products a little better than some of the other Chinese stuff. Had pretty good luck with their stuff. So this car's pretty cool. You turn the key and it doesn't start. You got to pull this lever up, and then it starts. It's crazy. That this operates. It operates the starter function of it. But it's also for the transmission as well. Pretty neat, different. But it's a neat car. Look at how ornate this stuff is. Anyway, it runs pretty quiet. Yeah, watch this. Okay, so watch this. You turn this. Isn't that crazy? Little ticking, but it's probably not as loud as it sounds on video. not bad. Somebody did a little chop job right there at one time, but it's not leaking. And the generator actually runs the water pump. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, it primarily runs off the rear one until you get into it, and then the front one kicks in. I should see what the oil pressure looks like. Let's see. There we go. Yeah, 60 psi. Looks good. And he had drilled the holes in here. It used to have a speaker inside of here for the radio. Anyway, it'll open. But yeah, and the floors are great, man. These are just wooden panels here. I kept the original fiberglass piece, and I mean, look at these floors. That's just the hole for the master cylinder, but they're in great shape. Keep the mice out of this thing. No rot under the doors. I kind of like this stuff. I remember seeing kitchen counters or kitchen tables with that 50s tables. Awesome, man. And I did put an electric fan on it because there's no room for the mechanical anymore with this setup. And I think we're going to be okay. Well, I shouldn't have banged on that with a piece of steel. Just end up marking it up. It looks okay. The vent still works. I kept that working. Look at these awesome fenders. Yeah, and the windows, everything works in this thing. It's pretty neat. I keep it covered up with like 5 layers of stuff. Sounds so neat when you're cruising down the road. It almost sounds kind of like a Harley. Kind of, you can hear the cylinders. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then I run the 6-volt horns on 12 volts, and they're loud. I don't want to do it now for my neighbors, but man, there's the switch for the Columbia. You just flick that switch like that, and it's a vacuum canister running off the engine. This is actually it. I do it manually right now, but this is the kit that hooks to the engine. Uses vacuum, and it'll pull it one way on or one way off. And then it also has a speedo correction in it as well. This is a part of the kick down. It'll kick it out. But when you flip the switch and it flips it over, it's got a little gear drive that switches the speedo as well and corrects it. But these cars usually run 411 gears standard, and then when you switch it over, it's more like a highway gear. Ah, it's doing it again. Oh well. There it goes. Yeah. This was copper. I'd used a heavy wall copper for all of this stuff. And you see, it's been sitting back here getting kind of lonely. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I cannot believe that he gave me this car. Yeah, it's got the glass window in the back. It just needs a new top. And the old chrome's peeling off, but underneath they had all the bows chromed. I guess at the time, there was a time when chrome was really cheap, and they guys used to chrome everything. The tops, the dash, the bows on here. Yeah. Hopefully I could find some more of this stuff and have these fixed the way it was to match everything else. Maybe put some pleats in it or something. Yeah, but it's so big. What is really neat part of the story was Jim and his wife. They're in their 80s. Jim passed away a few years ago, and I was able to get this back together and on the road and brought it back up to Marin, and Jim and his wife got to see this thing running after all those years. It had been parked since 1960, I think, and I picked it up maybe 5 years ago, and sat in his garage all that time. But the floors down there are like, they're so nice, just little pinholes here and there, but I did epoxy coating on the frame underneath, on the top of the body and everything, then sealed it. And but back here, I don't know if you can see it, but on this plate there's tic-tac-toe scratched in the back of it. And their kids, they used to take their kids to school, grade school, in this car when they lived up there. Their kids are now in their 60s, and they were the ones that would sit in this rumble seat when they went to school and scratch tic-tac-toe in the back of this thing. So that's just really neat to see that. And knowing that they're part of my family was a neat part of family history. And yeah, it was too bad we had to sell the properties next door to them, but you know, sometimes you gotta do that. But yeah, a lot of history with this thing. So it's a sentimental value for me as well. I've driven this car quite a bit. It's just lately it's been kind of sitting back here now, and I'll move it around now and then, and watch for any rodents. So far, no problems with rodents jumping in it. But that worked out really good, flipping that rod to the underneath the column versus being on top. Cleared everything. Yeah, and this is the original. This looks like it's original vinyl right here. Yeah, that's the color the interior was at one time. They used to call this stuff horsehair. Yeah, burlap. Yeah, pretty neat. Yep. Yeah, the first trip, when I got this thing back together, I took this thing down. I live in Central California, and I took this thing on the road down to Ventura for a car show, the Primer Nationals, years ago. And this first thing, got in it and just took off. I had no idea what it's going to do. You know, I didn't rebuild the engine. Well, one thing that was pretty cool is when I took the main bearing, some of the caps off to take a peek at them, and they still had oil on them after all those years. So that goes to show, even when a car sits, the oil in the main bearings isn't going to disappear necessarily. Yeah, I guess you could get one or two, but it was still there. And so I just put some paste on the bearings and stuff like that to get them ready for the initial startup, and slapped it back together, and new water pumps and stuff like that, and then got it going. I was able to use the original radiator that was in it. I just flushed it out myself, did a reverse flush, and it was fine. And took it down there, and when I was at the show, a guy came by for Hot Rod Deluxe magazine, and he really liked the car, so he did a photo shoot on it. And so Jim and his wife both got to see the car in a magazine together, a story about them and the history of it, and I brought it up to them to see it before he had passed away. It was pretty awesome. Yeah, that kind of stuff doesn't happen too often. But at the time he couldn't drive anymore when I had it together, but he was pretty excited to hear it running. He loved the sound of the glass packs and all that stuff, and it has been lowered as well. I lowered it a little bit more than what he had, and a little shorter profile tires on it. And yeah, but this thing pretty cool, man. But I appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully it was interesting anyways, and remember to like and subscribe, hit the ring bell button, all that good stuff people tell you to do, and have a good day.